Hello, friends. This is my presentation, Censoring the Censorship, by me, Clarissa Powell. Um, here we go. So, in my paper, I talked about censorship, obviously, and I talked about different aspects of it, but the main aspect I focused on, well, I guess the main two aspects, was that censorship is ineffective and censorship is a hindrance. I'll go through the first point in this slide. So in high school, I read a list of books and I researched a list of banned books and I researched why each book had been banned. And I researched a lot of books, but the only book that really stuck with me was The Awakening by Kate Chopin. And the only thing I really remember about this book is that the main character has an affair and commits suicide by drowning. Kind of sad, but that's what stuck with me. Now, I feel like many young readers have come across this similar experience where they discover the quote-unquote inappropriate material that is in a book, but then completely miss the reason why the content was put in the book in the first place. So my argument then is that young readers will eventually find out whatever is being kept from them in the literature that is censored. So censorship is ultimately ineffective in its attempt to protect them. I mean, young readers will one day see death, or they'll one day see the effects of affairs or effects of rape on a friend, or they'll see homosexuality, or they'll see violence, like all these things that are censored in books. They'll see it one day. And so there's no, like, censorship in this sense is ineffective, because what we're trying to keep from these young readers, they'll see in the end. And so I see the benefits of censorship, that it keeps like young readers innocent, but at the same time I would argue that it's just making them almost ignorant in a way. This next slide is censorship is a hindrance, and I say that because it kind of, I don't know, just it limits the amount of wonderful literature that they can be exposed to. I mean, think about it. If children or young adults, whoever, are only exposed to censored cookie cutter pieces of literature, then how are they ever to make decisions between what is bad, good, and even better? So I kind of cut this off a little bit, but the consequences of censoring literature is my next point that I wanted to talk about a little bit. So in the research that I did, I found a court case called Sund versus City of Wichita Falls in Texas, where two children's books, Heather Has Two Mommies and Daddy's Roommate, were tried in court by a local church because of their depictions of homosexuality. And in this case, and others similar to it, people were trying to protect the young readers from content that might not be widely accepted. However, what this does is encourage children to be closed-minded about certain topics and maybe even learn to fear certain ideas. Now, this doesn't just have to be about homosexuality. I mean, like, if a book, I don't know, about puberty is banned, then children might see that topic as something that's too mature for them and meant to be avoided. And I mean, how uncomfortable it would be for them when their bodies actually start changing and they don't really know how to handle it. So, I mean, censorship does protect in a way, but at the same time, it leads to just ignorance about some things, is my argument. And I think it's sad. Like, I mean, young readers should have their minds opened by literature, not closed by the removal of it. This next slide talks a little bit about how I feel that avoidance of certain topics and like censoring things isn't always the best policy. In one of the articles that I found, it says that that only 8.5% of responding schools that were surveyed, yeah, there it is. 8.5% of the responding schools that were surveyed said that they used text, films, or other materials addressing same-sex desire in the English language arts curriculum. Now, again, I'm not trying to condone homosexual behavior. Like, that's people's choices. But what I'm saying is it's not right to completely censor out homosexual literature or literature that involves violence or racism, things like this. Like, you can avoid it, I guess, but it's not the best policy, because the children are, like, young readers are going to see this in the future one day. And if they see it only in the sense that it was once a banned book that they learned about once in school, I personally would not think that this is the best thing to do. But I feel like the best thing adults can do for the rising youth is to expose them to this quote-unquote inappropriate, questionable content at a younger age and educate them about it rather than hide it from them. I mean, young people are sent to school to learn, right? So they must be exposed to different concepts and ideas that, while controversial, will help them learn to develop their own opinions and how to deal with some of these, I guess, more weighty topics. The next slide is talking about freedom to choose. A collection of poems entitled that I found in my research, Male and Female Under 18, Frank Comments from Young People About Their Sex Roles Today, was banned from a certain school in Massachusetts. And one of the poems in particular, called The City to a Young Girl, was harshly criticized and fought against. And the problem with this poem is that some of the content seemed a little too sexual, and so adults got kind of unhappy about it. And in this particular situation, this book was taken to court, and the judge ultimately said the most effective antidote to the poison of mindless orthodoxy is ready access to a broad sweep of ideas and philosophies. There is no danger from such exposure. Basically, this judge said there's no danger in exposing children to this kind of maybe a little more racy material. The only danger comes from when we make everything the same, because then there's no, like he says, there's no broad sweep of ideas and philosophies. There's just one quote-unquote right, appropriate idea. And that is not right. We should be exposing to children, young adults, to a large variety of topics. And so through this, like, it will be maybe difficult for them to take in at first, but in a classroom setting, they'll learn to, I guess, wrap their head around concepts that they might not have thought of before, and then learn how to discuss these topics with an open mind. That's the ultimate goal here, is not to keep children behind some kind of glass where they are like in some bubble, but to help them learn to come to terms with the way the world is. This next, I cut off the bottom, but the bottom here is 22%. This is frustrating me. Anyway, and so the next part was the counter argument to my argument. It says that children under, in some of the research that I found, children under the age of 10 now account for 22% of online porn consumption under 18 years old. So that's where this 22 comes from. Well, how does that tie into my argument, you may ask? I'll tell you. So Michael Flood, who works at the Australian Research Centre in Sex, Health and Society, once wrote an essay entitled The Harms of Pornography Exposure Among Children and Young People. Basically, in this article, he talked about how children can first come in contact with pornography by something that's found by accident. And I guess a way that I tie this into my essay is that how do we know that their first exposure to something, I guess, a little bit inappropriate wasn't in their school library or their local library in a book they found? I mean, obviously it might not be like straight pornographic material, but it might be the word sex, or it might be a scene of two people hugging each other. I don't know, like something that would get their minds thinking, oh, what is this? And I need to learn more about this, and questioning it. So the counter argument that I felt was the strongest was, all right, well, if children have the potential of finding pornographic material in a library, we should censor books so that they stay far away from this danger. There's no risk in them finding this. And so banning and censoring books from libraries would limit the chance of an accidental or intentional exposure to children at such a young age. Which is a fair argument. I can respect that. My counter-argument to a counter-argument? My response, there we go, to a counter-argument is that young readers ultimately have the ability to choose what they want to view. Just as I said at the beginning of my presentation, censorship is ultimately ineffective because younger readers will find a way to access the banned literature if they really desire to do so. Even if we keep it from them, they will find a way. And the point that I think really hits home was a video I saw by a bunch of authors speaking about censorship. And I want to show a clip of this video with you friends real fast. Just like 45 seconds of it.
This sounds ridiculous to me. It's like banning thoughts, banning ideas, banning people, anything.
Widescreen.
You ban, I can see their validity in other situations. So banning's a hard thing. It's never.
Why are we lagging? Oh.
Absolutely. I think books should not be banned. Books only coerce people if they want to be coerced. Banning books is.
There, I don't know.
It's a weird way of getting.
Okay, I don't know why this is lagging. But that, okay, that's annoying. That's the main piece that I wanted everyone to hear. I'll play it again real fast.
Books only coerce people if they want to be coerced.
There it is. Books only coerce people if they want to be coerced. Obviously, I mean, that's open to debate. But I agree with what Joseph Olshan is saying. Ultimately, children have the ability to choose if they will continue learning about what they found in a book. And if they do, that's their decision. If they don't, that's their decision. Literature only coerces children if they want to be coerced. Which is kind of a bold statement, but I stand by it. The argument that I would make most firmly is that we shouldn't be banning books from schools. We should be teaching children how to handle this content that they come across, and teaching parents how to talk to their children about this content that they will come across. I mean, we can't hide children forever from death or from sad things that will happen in this lifetime. So the best way that we can help them is to help prepare them for what they might find in the future. My conclusion is basically that giving young readers access to literature that will challenge their comfort zones from its mature, quote-unquote mature content is one way to prepare them, because although it may be difficult, this exposure will ultimately save them from lives of ignorance and incompetence. I feel very strongly that censorship is not the best idea. It's not the way to go. The way to go is to help children understand that these things will happen. These things, it's life. That's what they're going to come across. But if we prepare them and help them find a way to cope with it, to deal with it, that's where our success will lie. Not in guarding them from it, but in helping them find a way to be in it, but not of it, as the scriptures once said. Well, that is my presentation. Here's an overview of what I talked about. Censorship is ineffective. Censorship is a hindrance. There are negative consequences to censoring books and literature, and censoring can protect children and young readers from potentially harmful content. Young readers must prepare to face the realities of life. Here's my question slide. Any questions? No? And that's my bibliography. It was so much fun to do this with everyone. I hope you enjoyed my presentation. Yes, thank you very much. Okay, goodbye.